Hello. We are in a new and exciting location. I apologize in advance if my voice sounds weird. We are in my bathroom, if you could tell by my shower curtain, but I figured it made a colorful backdrop. And the reason we're in my bathroom is because a certain someone, her organs are failing or something is going on, and she can't be in the rest of the house. She has to be where there's no rugs because a certain someone cannot control her bladder. And she has to wear diapers, but the diapers are not here. And I've had a real weekend. That's why this video is up on Monday, hopefully. I don't know when. I'm gonna edit it as soon as I'm done with this. As I spent most of the day yesterday at the emergency vet with that one. So I don't know what's going on. What we're gonna do, this is my first weekly check-in for my 30 books in 30 days reading challenge. And I wanted to let you know what my progress is, sort of what this challenge is also, and why I do it every year, and then go through and wrap up the 8 books I have read so far in the month of June. As I'm filming this, in case you're not watching this the day it releases, which is highly likely, it is June 10th, 2024. Let's get going. So the first thing is this challenge, 30 books in 30 days. I started doing this way before I had a YouTube channel, as just like a fun thing to do to see if I could do it. And it was before my reading really amped up a lot, because side note, during the pandemic, my boss really let some things go, hey, you can wear your earphones at work now as long as you do your job. So I started listening to audiobooks at work during the pandemic. But before that, I just read at a more normal pace. In case you're wondering how I read so many books, it's because I listen to audiobooks at work. But anyway, I started doing this as a way to clear books off my shelves at a faster pace. That's why I started doing it, and now it's just sort of a fun thing that I do every year to really get some books in that I maybe couldn't, also to see if I can do it, and just because it's fun. So I've strategically planned my TBR way ahead of time, and I do it so that it's more manageable. So I don't have 2 giant books back to back. I have audiobooks interspersed throughout, so I can have days where I have multiple days to read a book. I have little short novellas, and then I have I limited the amount of large books that I don't think I have anything over 450 pages on this list. The one book that I do is an audio, so that's coming up at the end of the month. Anyway, so that's the challenge. And so the 30 books in 30 days, those are 30 planned books. And then I am, of course, sneaking other books in because I can't help myself. And I have no impulse control related to the money struggles. But no, just rent is too expensive. Bills are too expensive. Groceries and gas are too expensive. Didn't expect this to be a money rant or whatever, capitalism rant. But there you go. Let's get into the books. So like I said, I've read 8 books so far this month. It would have been more, but I couldn't read yesterday. I couldn't even listen to an audiobook while I was at the emergency vet. I literally don't even know what I did for the 8 hours I was there. I think I just sort of zoned in and out. I don't know. I listened to a couple podcasts, whatever. I think I read 10 pages of my book. Worrying about your pet and thinking you might have to think about euthanasia. Sorry, should I content warn that is not a conducive reading environment. Also, that was a hellaciously uncomfortable waiting room, and I was surviving on vending machine food, so it wasn't great. Anyway, let's get to the books. First book, well, actually, this is the first book I scheduled, so I'm calling it book number 1, but technically it is the book I finished the latest. I just finished it today, and that is Blackout by Connie Willis. So this book I've been wanting to read for ages. This is actually the 3rd book in a series that Connie Willis has written about time traveling historians in Oxford in the 2050s and through 2060s. The first book is Doomsday Book, and then To Say Nothing of the Dog. And I think she wrote a short story before that. This book was published in 2010. Oh, this isn't comfy. So yeah, it was published in 2010. Actually won the Hugo. And it is very divisive. There are people that hate this book, hate it. And I can see why. It isn't perfect. And the reason for all of this, by the way, Connie Willis has a certain style. If you haven't read her books, she focuses on minutia. She is very heavy on farce. people constantly missing each other. Communication or lack of, or finding people is like a thing with her. And if that's gonna annoy you, you shouldn't read her books because it's very prominent. It's extremely prominent. But this book in particular, she wrote it as one book, and then her publisher split it in two, and they literally split it in two, like, without any consideration for making the first book have an arc and the second book have an arc also. It's just one arc and then you stop. The story just stops. And I read it, I was like, what? That's where it ends? What? And I knew it was coming, and it was still baffling. What this book is about is that it takes place in World War II during the Blitz, and three historians are dropped in to this essential time period. I'm like, one's dropped in May, one's dropped in June, one's dropped in, but all within the same several month period, and none of them can get back. And so they have to try to find each other. But the reason for them not being able to get back, we don't know. They're just put in there. And the historians, by the way, they're true historians. So you have to buy into this world where somehow time travel exists and it has not been co-opted by the government for nefarious purposes or for black shadowy organizations or by corporations. It's just for nerds to study things, which I love that, but it's not realistic. The main point of this book isn't battles, it isn't soldiers, at least not in battle. It's not that stuff like most World War II fiction, which I'm pretty tired of at this point, and I don't even read that much of it. It's just oversaturated. But this is a book about the people in England who were left behind and how they lived their lives during blackouts, when they had to go into shelters every night, what they did to pass the time, what the rules were, how they made money, what it was like being bombarded every night and waking up to find out that a building is now gone and people you knew are now gone, and trying to figure out where people are if they don't show up to the shelter. Are they dead? The people caring for the children in the countryside so they're not in the bombing. And one of the historians gets dropped off near Dunkirk because he wants to witness heroism, and he gets involved in Dunkirk. So they're historians and they're stuck. And this whole book is like, not much happens. I mean, they just experience life in England during the Blitz. And while they try to look for each other and continue to not find each other until like the very almost end. So I really liked it though, but it is vibes only. And if you do not like the vibes that are happening, then you are not going to like this book. I have a feeling I will like this book more in hindsight once I find out where it's going, because this is just like a book that goes like this and then it stops, and it doesn't have the climax or the resolution that a story is meant to have. And I did the audio, so if you are interested in this book, unfortunately it is Audible only, but it is narrated by the late, great Catherine Kellgren, who died of cancer several years back. And when that happened, I went and I found like pretty much every audiobook that she narrated that I was even remotely interested in, and I added it to my TBR, and this was one of them. I don't know when I'm gonna get to part 2, which is called All Clear, but I need to do it soon before I forget the details and who some of these minor characters are, and so that I can like complete that emotional journey. But it definitely won't be until next month or the month after. Like, I'm not doing it this month. It's too stuffed. It's too stuffed. I gave this book 3.5 stars, and I'm probably gonna round up, but I think I'm gonna save that decision either until the end of the month or until I read book 2. I don't know, I haven't decided. Maybe I'll round it down until I read book 2, and then I'll probably round it up. Whatever. That's book 1. Okay, so book 1 out of 30. The second book, unfortunately, and I am counting DNFs in this challenge, is Secret Identity by Alex Segura. So this is a book that I was on the fence about when it was first released. I love the cover. I love the idea of somebody working in the comics industry. I like that it's historical fiction set in the 70s. You don't see a lot of that, particularly New York City. I also like the idea that the main character is a child of Cuban immigrants, and she is queer, and she's a woman trying to get into comics in the 70s. So all of this stuff, and it's a mystery, combined with a book inside of a book, because there's a mini comic in here. It was just floppy flopperson for me. I don't know what it was about this writing voice. It was just so dull. I could not get interested in it. It felt very telly, not showy. I didn't feel anything for the characters. Like, I got pretty far, and like the mystery hadn't even really started yet. And I was just like, I don't want to waste. I have 30 books to read minimum this month. I am not wasting my time on this book. Luckily, I did not pay full price for this, despite it being a hardcover. I got it for like $4 or $5 at Book Outlet. So thank you, Book Outlet. You've done your service. I don't really have much more to say about this because I didn't finish it, but I just didn't think that it was worth my time, obviously, because I didn't finish it. And I'm upset because it seemed like it was a book tailor-made for me, but the writing style, either a bad writing style, or an incompatible writing style with your tastes can just kill a story. Like, you can have a really good story and just, if you don't gel with the writing style, you're fucked. Yeah. DNF this. Didn't rate it because I didn't get far enough and I didn't feel confident that my rating would be in any way accurate. So goodbye. Secret Identity will be unhauling. Maybe it will find somebody who likes it. Okay, that was book 2. Book 3 was a romance. So you'll see I've got like some pretty heavy subject matter, and then I got fluff. So that is X's and O's by Amy Leah. This is a contemporary romance. This is actually the second book in a series, but you don't have to read them in order. I didn't read the first book, and I'm not going to. I'm not interested in it, and I'm not interested in the next book either. This is a book about a book influencer. She's actually a book talker. She's like a year out of being dumped by her fiance, who is a jerk, but she works with him. She's a nurse in the NICU, and he's a doctor in the NICU, and so they see each other all the time. But she and her grandmother one day get together and they start talking, and her grandmother says, hey, why don't you go through your exes? That's how I found my husband, because she married her childhood sweetheart, because her first husband died, and then she found her childhood sweetheart again and married him, and it's a very cute love story. And the main character, whose name is Tara Chen, she is biracial. Anyway, she's a book nerd, but she's sort of like retreated into her book talk hobby and reading, and like basically all she reads is romance. So she's a romance book talker. That influences her. I think she sort of reads like she's a little bit autistic, a little bit. Like, I don't know. I don't think that was intentional, but she like couldn't read the room sometimes. And she's very like into reading people and like trying to pretend to be what they want to be, but not like in a way that's calculated. Like, she doesn't know she's doing it kind of thing. But anyway, that's speculation for another day. So where the dude comes in is that her sister, who's the main character of the first book in the series, is getting married and is moving in with her fiance Scott, who's a firefighter, and his coworker Trevor and him used to be roommates, and now Trevor has an open room, so they just swap. Tara moves in with Trevor and Scott moves in with fiance sister. So it's not like ideal for either of them. The very first time they meet, when she's moving in, she walks in on him having sex with a lady over the kitchen counter. He sterilizes it, don't worry. But it's not a great beginning, and he ends up like, she hides in the bathroom, and he ends up like being very sweet and like knocking on their arm and like giving her Cheetos like as a apology gift. But anyway, they sort of become friends, and he decides he wants to help her with her little challenge, which is basically the plot of the High Fidelity, by the way. And I cannot believe this very pop culture savvy author and pop culture savvy character did not once reference High Fidelity. This is the plot of High Fidelity, going back through the exes to see what you did wrong, but really to see if you can get back together. Like, that's High Fidelity. So he decides he wants to help her because she's so pathetic. You know, it goes from there. So I have mixed feelings about this book. Overall, it did succeed, I think, and I'm going to keep it, and I'd probably read it again because their relationship is really fun. Like, the way they become friends with each other and the way that he just loves her for exactly who she is. Weird hobbies, blabbermouth and all. He just loves her, and it's very pure and sweet. But also the main character is a little bit frustrating. Just like, she does things that don't make sense all the time. I don't know. It's hard to describe, and it's one of the reasons that I'm rounding this up to 4 is because the bad stuff has sort of fallen out of my memory, and the good stuff is what's staying. So maybe that would change if I read it again. But for now, I'm having very positive feelings about this book, and I gave it 3.5 stars, but I rounded up to 4. So that's X's and O's by Amy Leah. Okay, so book 4 is a cozy mystery, and that is How to Solve Your Own Murder by Kristen Perrin. I thought this was a debut, but then in the author's notes, it mentioned her publisher and her other books, and then I looked on Goodreads, and all that's there is books in German. So I'm very confused. I know that she is an American, but she lives in England with her husband and her kids. So that is how she's able to accurately write about England, because she lives there. So I was happy about that, because I was worried that she was an American writing about England. This is about a woman. Well, there's two main characters of concern. The main character's name is, what's her name? Annie Adams. Her great aunt Frances sends her a letter basically informing her, or her lawyer sends her a letter basically informing her that she is now the new heir to this estate because Frances is rich. And this is a bit of a shock because previously Annie's mother was the heir. And this is a big deal because when Frances was 16, she got a fortune from a fortune teller that basically said that she was going to be murdered, that her life would end in murder. Actually, let me read you the fortune. Your future contains dry bones. Your slow demise begins right when you hold the queen in the palm of one hand. Beware the bird, for it will betray you, and from that there's no coming back. But daughters are the key to justice. Find the right one and keep her close. All signs point toward your murder. The reason I wanted to read that now is because it's apparent that Frances has decided that Annie's mom is no longer the daughter that will lead her to justice. It's now Annie for some reason. We don't know why at the beginning. But when Annie gets to this town, is it Knoll Point? I don't remember the name of the town. It's the name of the series because it's going to be a series going forward, which I'll talk about in a second. I don't remember. Knoll Point, Knoll Woods, something Knoll. I don't remember. Anyway, so when she gets there, she shows up at the lawyer's office and they're like, okay, Frances is having car trouble. We're just going to wait till everyone's here and then we're going to go over to the mansion together to meet with her because she can't drive. So it's the lawyer's nephew needs to be there for some reason, and then Frances's stepnephew, because her husband took in his nephew when his parents died. So they're waiting for him, but he doesn't show up, his wife does. So they all drive over to the house, and when they get there, no one answers, and they go inside and they find Great Aunt Frances dead. And she's clutching a bouquet of roses and her hands are all bloody. And it's pretty apparent that she's been poisoned, but they're not quite sure. They said it might be a heart attack, but main character thinks she's been poisoned. And it turns out, yeah, she was murdered. The other thing it turns out, I didn't know this going in, this is a murder game. Basically, in the will, Great Aunt Frances says, I will give my fortune to whoever solves my murder and brings my murderer to justice. The two people up for contention are Annie and Saxon, who is the stepnephew. And they are in competition with each other. And if the detective or the lawyer's grandson solve the murder first, then neither one of them gets the fortune. She's going to sell the land. Okay, baby. She's going to sell the land and it's going to be developed and people in the town are going to be pissed at her because they're going to turn the town into like this corporate hellscape and tourist stuff. And it's going to be bad. So there's a huge incentive for either Saxon or Annie to solve the murder. I really enjoyed this, actually. The thing about Frances is she spent her whole life, like the catch here, the gimmick, is that Frances spent her whole life pre-investigating her murder. Like, she got paranoid. Like, it wasn't good for her in the end because it sort of ruined her life and it made her a nuisance to the community, to people who weren't going to murder her. And the other thing is she started collecting secrets. So she has files on everyone in town. She's got dirt on them and she knows all their secrets. So that's why I say, like, we're going to talk about the series because it's very clear those files hold a lot of secrets that the main character is going to be using going forward in the series. I don't know how long the series could possibly be. I don't know. Sometimes cozy mystery series can go on forever and sometimes they don't. So I don't know. This was good. I really liked the characters. I thought that it had a lot of heart and a lot of substance that a lot of cozy mysteries are missing for me. And I thought it also had a good writing style. Like, a lot of cozy mysteries for me, like, the writing just isn't up to snuff and like it takes me out of the story. But this was good. I enjoyed it. One complaint that I really have about this book is that the main character, Annie, is very passive for about the first half of the book. Information is just coming at her. To a certain extent, that's understandable because she is new to town. And the other guy, Saxon, he's lived there his whole life. So he already knows everybody. He already knows all the secrets. He knows who could potentially be in on something. And she has to start from scratch. So she's at a pretty big disadvantage. And so she's not being an active investigator. She's just sort of sitting in place, and as things come to her, she's sort of going with them and filing them away in her brain, it was interesting-ish because we were learning along with her about the town, but also at the same time, I really feel like the author could have done something to make her a more active participant in the narrative in the first half of the book. She gets obsessed with this diary that turns out to be really important, but like she doesn't know that when she starts reading it. So, but the second half of the book, when she gets more proactive about the mystery and how it all turns out. The other thing I do have a complaint about is that the murderer was kind of mustache twirly. So overall, I had a really good time. I won't be buying the future books in this series. It's not that kind of series for me. It's not like a Richard Osman book, but I'm going to keep this because I think it's really cool. And I would reread this first book, but future books I'll just library. So yeah, 3.5 stars rounded up. Book 5 is Paladin's Strength by T. Kingfisher. So at the end of last month, at the very end, I had to rush and read the first book in this series. What's it called? Paladin's something, whatever. It's not important. It's purple. It's the purple book. I'll start with Paladin in this series because I knew I had to do that because I was reading this month. So I had to read book 1 first. I really enjoyed that book. I gave it 4 stars. So I was expecting something similar for this one because it's not often that a book levels up in book 2. A series levels up in book 2. Hi, baby. What's up with your butt? Are you okay? Okay, sorry. I just checked my cat's butthole. So I wasn't expecting to love it so much, but I gave this book 5 stars. This is a 5-star read for me. The premise of the series is set in her world of the White Rat, which Sword Heart and the Clockwork Boys is also set in. I have not read Clockwork Boys. I have read Sword Heart. It's a medieval-ish, fantasy world, but it's got some cool twists to it, involving religion mainly. So the Church of the White Rat appears frequently, and there's other gods that also have churches, and they call paladins sometimes. So the beginning of this series starts with the god, the Saint of Steel, who was a god, not a saint actually, it's a confusing name, but with this god dying, and his paladins go off the rails. They lose control. Basically, it's descend into like grief and depression for a really long time. And the Church of the White Rat takes in the ones who survived and gives them like a home, and now they work for the White Rat. So the first book was about Stephen, one of the paladins, and this book follows his BFF, Istvan. And Istvan is on a mission because in the first book they introduced these killers who have been chopping people's heads off and then stealing their bodies. And so in this one, he's chasing those killers, and when he's doing that, he happens to get involved with some locals who attack him for reasons, and then somehow he wins, and he ends up with a new companion given to him by the locals, and it turns out to be Clara. And she's like, just play along, man. This is their culture. I need to get out of here. I'm really a nun, and I am trying to find my sisters. Our Abbey was set on fire, and my sisters were kidnapped, and I've been following them, but I can't get out of this village, so just take me with you, man. Basically. But she like is on his tent doorstep with a sword. It's a whole thing. It was a really good opening. Anyway, so they end up traveling together because she's searching. He's like, well, I'm going this way. You can come with me. We can help each other. And meanwhile, Clara, unbeknownst to Istvan, is a bear shifter. So this order of nuns, which you guys know my thing with nuns. Okay, I'm not going to talk about it again, but I got so excited when I realized the main character was a nun. But not only is she a nun, she is a bear shapeshifter nun. And this order of nuns serves Ursa, Saint Ursa, who is the patron saint of bears. So anyway, she turns into this enormous bear. I'm picturing a grizzly. I don't know what else kind of bear to picture, but it's great. Hi, Lily. It's okay. She's so mad at me. You're so bossy. So they're traveling together, and the bear thing is something that she's really concerned about because people have really not reacted well to it in the past. They're not fantasy readers, apparently, because if I met somebody who could shapeshift into a bear, I would be like, oh my God, tell me everything. And we'd be best friends immediately. She's really wary about it, and plus it's a secret. It's like a secret because nobody knows that these bear nuns can actually turn into bears except for a very small circle of people. And obviously this is important information because there's an obvious reason that somebody kidnapped nuns, and it's not because of their nunnish habits. It's because of, you know, the bear thing. So it's essentially a road trip book while they go to rescue these nuns, but also Istvan's mission with the killers coincides eventually, because of course it does. It was just so much fun. Like, I loved them together. Like, the thing about this that I loved, and it got sexy, but not in a way that made me roll my eyes. The scene, Istvan is very attracted to Clara, like, immediately, but he's very respectful of her. He can't help noticing her, but it's always in like a really cute way. So, like, as an example, she makes him ride on her back as a bear because I can't remember why exactly, he's tired or something and she's strong. And anyway, when I think he's injured, and then he wakes up in a cave, but she has shifted to a human in her sleep, and he wakes up pillowed on her very voluminous breasts. And meanwhile, context for Clara, she is over 6 feet tall. He's very tall. He's like 6'5", 6'6", and she's almost as tall as he is. And she's very big and strong, and she has a massive bosom, and he's into it. He's so into her being like as big as him. She's not just a little waif with giant boobs. She's like a sizable woman with giant boobs. So it makes sense. He wakes up pillowed on her bosoms, and he forgets where he is, and he thinks he's just in bed with somebody he's just had sex with, because paladins aren't celibate. And she's a lay nun also. That's important. She's not consecrated. But the best part is he gets like, oh my God, and he just gets into the boobs. He's like, and he makes his like inner monologue is like, this is best. And then he starts making wubba wubba noises. And she's just looking at him like, what the fuck are you doing? And he gets so embarrassed. But like, he genuinely like forgot where he was, and he thought that he already had consent. Anyway, it just played so well. And like, it's stuff like that where their attraction is very clearly made for each other, but it's also in a way that makes it clear that they clearly see the other person as a full human being. Anyway, that's all to say I gave this 5 stars, and I'm so excited to read the next book, 2 books in the series. I immediately went on T. Kingfisher's website to see how much the hardcover copies of the series are, and they're on sale right now, but of course I can't afford them. I was maybe going to be able to afford them, but a certain someone has now taken that out of the picture. And also, FYI, right now, if you are watching this and you are into Rebecca Ross's Divine Rivals duology, I had pre-ordered Ruthless Vows, the special edition from Fairy Loot, because I assumed that I would be really, really into that series for some reason, and apparently I'm not. Like, spoiler alert for later in the video, I'm reading Divine Rivals right now, and I'm not into it, really. I mean, parts of it I'm into, and parts of it I'm like, ugh. But I think I'm gonna give it like 3 stars, and I do not need a 3-star sequel that I potentially sell for a couple $100 to fund my vet bills. So that's just PSA. I have put that book up in my Pango, and as of before me filming this, it was not sold yet. So if you want it, it's there. So what was I saying? Oh yeah, 5 stars. Someday I will own the hardcovers. Book 6 is now, unfortunately, a DNF. So I made it to about 55% of 6 Crimson Cranes by Elizabeth Lim. So this is one that I was semi-interested in and put it on my like maybe radar, and then when I saw it at Book Outlet on a sale, probably got it again for like $5 or $6, I just scooped it up because it has been getting really good reviews, and it's also a retelling. I think it's a combo retelling of 2 fairy tales. The first, I don't really know the Chinese version, but your Western European version, I think, is like the 6 Swans. Let me look this up. I forgot to look it up before. It's the 6 Swans by the Brothers Grimm. It's the one where a witch turns this girl's brothers, the 6 brothers, into swans, and if she speaks a word, they will die one by one. So she has to somehow manage to save them without speaking. And that's the plot of this as well. But it's set, I think it's Chinese-inspired world. If I'm wrong, I'm sorry. I'm distracted lately and I didn't do my research. And also I DNF'd it. So here's why. So I could have finished it, but I knew halfway through, because of the writing style and the tone and what the story was turning out to focus on versus what I wanted it to focus on, this wasn't getting any more than 3 stars. Again, this is a 30 book and 30-day challenge. I was getting through it very slowly because I wasn't into it, and I could have forced myself to finish it, but it wouldn't have helped me at all. And I know I'm not going to read book 2. So I'm just like, at this point, I'm going to cut my losses. I flipped ahead and read the last 25-ish pages, and I feel satisfied enough with what happened. Sad because this cover is so beautiful, and I really wanted to love it because The Six Swans is one of my favorite fairy tales. It's so angsty and like, I don't know what it is about that fairy tale. Maybe I should reread it and make sure that my memory is not misportraying things. Maybe I don't actually like it anymore. But anyway, the memory of it is what I wanted this to live up to, and it just wasn't. Also, there's this thing where the curse that her stepmother puts on her involves a bowl on her head. And every time I thought of that, like it's a bowl she can't remove, I'm like, it threw me out. I was like, I can't take this story seriously. And apparently, one of my Goodreads friends has told me that the bowl thing is actually based in mythology. So it's not something that she just made up. But I think she could have left it out. I don't know. Maybe that's just me. And I'm being culturally insensitive. But it's like, who wants to read about a character with a bowl on her head? I don't know. Not me. Oh well, I feel bad. So I got over 50%, so I did give it 3 stars, but DNF. So that was book 6. Book 7, real quick. Oh wait, this is the ones. Okay, so not real quick. The next one will be real quick. So this, I was so proud of myself because I haven't had a 1 star in all of 2024. And I've just been like either DNFing books that I thought I would hate, but then you hit the one where you have to find out what happens and you're just compelled to finish it even though you know you hate it. And that's Falling by TJ Newman. So I'd seen some bad reviews of this and I was like, it can't be that bad. It can't be that bad. Really? But it turns out I hated it even more than most people did. So I didn't expect that. I wanted a dumb thriller. I was ready for a dumb thriller. I was interested to see, because the author is a former flight attendant, the knowledge of being on a plane. And that was there, but it was so drowned over in the poor writing and the really flat characters and the cheesiness. Oh my God, the cheesiness. This is the cheesiest thing I have ever read in my life. And I read 5 People You Meet in Heaven, okay? I read that in high school. I'll tell you where it lost me, okay? So for those of you who don't know, this is a book about a pilot whose family, he says goodbye to them, and then he gets an email when he's in the plane doing like pre-flight stuff, and it's a picture of his family and they're being held hostage, and this person says, if you don't crash the plane, I'm going to blow up your family. And it's his wife, his son, and his 2-year-old daughter. I'm not going to go into the like character drama that she inserts because it just was so poorly done. But I thought that plot might carry it through because that's a really interesting dilemma for a character to have to go through. But the writing was so inane, it ruined it. And I was like reading this, like watching a train wreck. I can't explain why I kept going, but I'll tell you where it lost me. Also, it kept having flashbacks in italics in random ass places. In the end of the book, I mean, this is a mega bestseller, so clearly people are liking it. But I also understand why she was declined by so many agents, because this is not well written. I wouldn't want to represent this book. And she has since published 1 more book, Drowning, which is the sequel to this one, and then her 3rd book, which I will never touch, and don't you guys touch it either. Just kidding, you can do what you want. But it's about a nuclear explosion in America, and it's called Worst Case Scenario. And I'm like, why would I want to read that? That's my literal nightmare. So anyway, this author is dead to me, but let me see if I can find this. Oh, here we go. Okay, so he's just gotten the email and he's looking at the picture. Let me read. I'm going to start before the line that got me so you can get some context. Carrie, who's his wife, and the children appeared on screen, and Bill almost choked. The black hoods had been removed, but both his wife and son were gagged and their hands were bound. Elise had stopped crying, and Carrie struggled to hold the baby on her hip as her motherly grace was made awkward by the ties and explosive vest. Her motherly grace was made awkward by the fact that she was tied up. What the f*** is that line? There's so many things wrong with it. I don't even know where to start. Like, I'm not going to parse it. I'm going to leave you with that line. Carrie struggled to hold the baby on her hip as her motherly grace was made awkward by the ties and explosive vest. I can't. Whole book is like that, you guys. Like, little kids being like, gee, mister. Like, just like that manipulative, over the top that is meant to make you feel something, but it's like, what? I'm not 5 years old. I wasn't born yesterday. That's not going to work on me. Anyway, 1 star. Do not recommend. My 8th book, we're looking at Ocean's Echo by Everina Maxwell. I read this author's first book, Winter's Orbit, last summer, and I liked it. 4 stars. I really liked the relationship between the 2 main characters, and I liked the aspect of the relationship was that one of them was grieving a relationship that was kind of toxic, so he had really conflicted feelings about grief versus other stuff. Anyway, I really liked the emotional core of that book, and that was missing for me in this one, even though the sci-fi was, I think, actually more interesting in this one, but I was going into it wanting the emotional hook, and I got the sci-fi hook, and with that one, you know, I don't know. I liked it. It was good. So what this book is about is these 2 characters. One of them is a reader, which he can read minds. They have other powers as well. And the other one is an architect, which is a person who can write a reader, meaning get into their mind and command them to do something against their will. And these people were made using scientific relics, alien relics that were found in space called remnants. And they are co-opted to be on a mission to look for more of these remnants. But he's a troublemaker, and his aunt, who's a very powerful legislator, like they literally just call her the legislator, wants to get rid of him and out from under her, and conscripts him into the army, even though he's never been in the army a day in his life, and orders for him to be synced with an architect that she has chosen for him. And syncing is a process where they're irrevocably bound together. It's permanent, and that gives the other person permanent access to mind control the other person. And it's gross. That's, what's his name? Tanalin Helkana. So he goes by Tanal. And that's that guy. And then the guy that is ordered to sync him, he's basically just graduated from the academy, and his mother is like a traitor, a really famous traitor. So he's got a lot to prove, but he's very ethical, and he refuses to sync. His name is Surit Yeni. He refuses to sync Tanal. And so they decide to pretend that they're synced while they go on this mission together. Anyway, things get political and complicated, and their bond sort of got lost in the middle of it. And I was just like, this is fine. But it never really got me. So I am going to be unhauling this. I'm going to keep Winter's Orbit for now, though. I'm currently reading books 9 and 10. So I'm currently reading The Counselor by E.J. Beaton. I will update you guys on that next weekend. And then I'm also currently reading, I'm about to go read it right now, Scorched Grace by Margot Duwaihi. Yeah, Margot Duwaihi. So I didn't know how to say her name previously, and now I do. And this is a mystery series about a chain-smoking lesbian nun. So, hope that's great. So those are the books I'm reading right now. Hopefully should finish. And then I am also reading books that I will wrap up when I finish them, but they're like in between everything else. If I have a free moment or DNF a book and then suddenly have an afternoon free kind of thing. Like I said, I'm reading Divine Rivals. I'm not having the best time. When she gets out of her own way and stops trying to impress people with her weird writing and weird metaphors and awkward scenes of dialogue, then I like when plot starts happening and the world building starts happening, I'm into it. But like everything else, I just kind of want to roll my eyes. So that's not going super well. And then I'm also reading an arc, which I should have finished by tomorrow, but it's not going to happen. And that is Moonbound by Robin Sloan. Apparently this is a book that takes place in the future of the world. In his first book, Mr. Penumbra's 24-Hour Bookstore, or whatever that book is called. I think I just misremembered the name. It's like set in the far future, and it's essentially a fantasy, and it's really confusing. And I listened to the first like 20% of it, and I was so lost. So I think maybe listening to it was the wrong move, but I gotta finish it because it's an arc. So we'll see. I'm not as into it as I thought I would be. Like, it's super weird. It's probably the weirdest book I read all year, and that's saying something. And then the last book I'm currently reading, in between others, is called Waysider by KJ Sutton. So this is actually kind of, a moment, because I got an email from the author out of nowhere to my email address for this channel, which is separate from my own personal email. And she was offering me an arc of this book, which is a 80s horror. It's new adult-ish. That's like Stranger Things meets something else. I don't know. the vibes sounded good, and she was like, do you like horror? You'll probably like this. And it's about a girl who drowns in a river and is dead and then wakes up and then she can see ghosts. And that's literally all I read is the prologue, but I was really into the vibes before I got distracted by Divine Rivals, because I was like, my plan was to read Divine Rivals and then immediately go into Ruthless Vows when it arrived, but now I don't care, so I'm just selling Ruthless Vows and just meandering my way through Divine Rivals. So maybe I'll pick up Waysider again sooner. There's no rush to finish Divine Rivals anymore. When I get further, I will tell you more about it, but it's monumental because not only was it my first offer of an arc directly from an author as a result of this channel, but also it's my very first email for this channel. Nobody has emailed me yet, so that was exciting. That is my first week wrap up for 30 books in 30 days. I hope this wasn't too much for your eyeballs. If the sound was sucky, I will find out in about 5 minutes if the sound was sucky. Just look at this cute face and these beans, and then tell me to my face that you were annoyed with the production quality of this video. Say hi, everyone. Say hi. She's mad. She's very bossy. Okay, that's that, friends. I'm off to cook dinner and read and edit this video. And I will see you, right, I was gonna post a video on Wednesday, but it'll probably be Thursday or Friday now. I'll see you on Thursday or Friday for whatever I have scheduled. I don't remember. It's that kind of day. Farewell.